Well, I mean, we've talked about principle today. I've heard that a couple of times, and I agree. I think principle is in play here, and I've wrestled with comments to make today because, quite frankly, that it can affect any one of us on this board. And again, I heard a couple of folks at the beginning of the meeting talk about doing the right thing. You can talk that maybe it is about protecting two individuals up here, two individuals, as Commissioner Peters said, in 10 years from now, are doing the right thing and representing the residents that, Clearwater Beach and Countryside will now have different people that that represent them. And so, I mean, that is doing the right thing. That is about principles. The technicality on quote-unquote local bills, I get it. But if they had done a local bill effort, then it would quote-unquote would have been preemptive. How would that, it doesn't have to be a majority. I think it doesn't have to be unanimous. It has to be a majority to move forward on local bills. Question mark? Does anybody know?
But it only takes
Sure.
one person to object for it to die in the Senate.
Oh.
In the Senate.
The Senate.
The Senate, okay.
Delegation vote would be a majority vote.
Yeah, thank you. So we can only guess how that might have turned out had they done it ahead of time. This thing was brought up, I think, last year up there. This is not like a shock or a surprise that it might come back. I think there was people certainly had a heads up that this issue could be brought back. And so again, I just think we're talking about our residents. And again, what is the right thing to do at this point? And I certainly am not in favor of using tax dollars to defend something against the residents getting the right to vote for the person they're supposed to represent them. It just doesn't make any sense to me. I don't know about the at-risk part. I mean, you guys have certainly leaped there to think that we're going to get vetoed on every single item. That shouldn't be the motivator anyway, but I don't suspect that the governor has that piece to him like you all suspect or suggesting he does. I think that's unfair. So I definitely am not going to support any effort on this commission's behalf to sue over this item. I think it's absolutely wrong. It's wrong for our residents. I think it's wrong that we ourselves, again, other people in elected office in this state go through the same issues or the same process. This isn't unique. We knew it was going to come again. We thought it was going to come again. It came last year. No surprises. For me, it's just a matter of doing the right thing for our residents. So those are my comments.
Commissioner Jordan.
One last thing. This is not a personal statement against Commissioner Flowers or Commissioner Seal, who I respect big time, both of them. Both of them work extremely hard, probably some of the hardest working commissioners we have. So it's not that. So that's all I have.
Thank you. Commissioner Jordan.
Well, I think that if it applied to all 10 of the charter counties that have term limits, or the 10 that don't have term limits, then that would be fine. But to have it targeted at one county, it just puts, and really to say we don't know that our governor is capable of being vindictive when he just snatched the special districts out from under Disney World. I think the issue is that it's so targeted, and this could happen in any county in the state. It just needs to be worded a little differently. And, that is going too far. And I'm not necessarily arguing for filing suit. I'm just saying that this is outrageous, and the things that have been said about Commissioner Seal have been outrageous. Fair is fair if it was applied to all the counties that don't have term limits, that have charters that, what were the other things in there? That clearly it was narrowed down enough to only apply to us. And that's dangerous to let go, I think. It's not, because it's not really just about this issue. It's about, they could do anything to one county. That's all.
Commissioner Peters.
Yeah, I mean, I agree, they can, and they have, to other counties. They have done, singled out things like that, too. And I agree with Dave, it's not personal, it's not at all. I think everybody's professional up here, and they've done a really great job in all the positions that they've held over the years. The question is it the county that should be doing the lawsuit, or should we have our own individual attorneys, is my point. Is it a conflict of interest because she's, this seat, don't mean that personally, has already registered to be a candidate? Is there personal gain in using the county to do that? My questions are more, is it the right thing for other reasons, okay? I don't like it when they preempt us, I don't, and there was only one bill that I ever voted for that was a preemption, and I was able to justify that one. So I'm not a big fan of taking away home rule, I'm not. But the question is, are we usurping the law by doing this? Because the bill, even though, it feels like a local bill, it's not a local bill, it's a general Florida bill.
Well, who else does it apply to?
But the whole bill is about the whole state of Florida and elections. And so it's tucked in there. It feels like it's a local bill, but it wasn't filed as a local bill, so it's not the same. Even though it feels that way, it's not the same. I'm just talking facts here. So, so is it the right thing that the county take this action for what currently is 2 people now and 2 people in 10 years? It's not just 2 people, it's 4 people. Currently, it impacts 2 people, which again isn't the majority of the governing body. And Jules says it affects the county because we're the governing body, but it's only 2 of you, 2 seats, not the majority. So is it the right thing to do to have the county do the lawsuit, or is it something that should be an individual attorney do if you feel that strongly about it?
Was that a Jewel question?
And Jewel can answer that question. Again, she's going to say it's the governing body, and again, my argument is going to be it's not the majority of the governing body. And so, and she can answer that, won't put words in her mouth, but that's what she's referred to with me. And like I said, we disagree on the opinions. If you want to answer it.
Absolutely. Let me preface some of my remarks by saying that the only issue that my office has looked into is whether the county has standing to file a lawsuit of this nature. Obviously, my role as county attorney is to represent the county and not any of you individually. You are all perfectly aware of that. Let me also say, I have spoken individually with a good number of you about this issue, but to be clear, not to any of you about what the others have spoken with me about. To be abundantly clear, that has not occurred. I have spoken quite a bit with Commissioner Peters. In my estimation, it comes down to that first issue I mentioned. We took a look as to whether the county, Pinellas County, whether we believed the county had standing to file suit as the plaintiff. We believe, my office and the folks that have looked into it, that the county does have standing. And I understand, and we have been very respectful in our conversations, as you all are here when you disagree. But we do believe the county has standing to file a lawsuit should you all here decide to take that action.
Commissioner Flowers.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Commissioner Peters, I really appreciate the way that you have laid out your concerns. I don't take anything of what you said personally. We've known each other since way before the WIDE days. I was in my almost 20 years.
Yeah.
Almost 20 years. So I don't take anything of what you're saying personally. And I think it is appropriate for you to ask those questions about my ability or inability to even vote on this matter, having filed already.
Right.
And I have spoken with Jewel because I reached out to her and just back and forth. I reached out to the supervisor of elections and, of course, talked to persons in Tallahassee just to try to stay on top of the movement of SB 524. For the public that may be listening, prior to SB 524 being filed, it was Representative Hutchin who filed in the legislature. And it passed the various committees and went through the process. And then it went over to the Senate. It became SB 524 and attached and tucked into the governor's voter protection bill. So if this had been something that was of standing and stood on its own through the House, through the Senate, and was presented, that would be different. It is my belief it was intentionally put in the voter protection piece because everyone in Tallahassee knew in the legislature that the governor desired that the voter protection piece pass. And to assure that this piece, SB 524, passed, it was tucked into the voter protection bill. Having been in politics a long time, I already knew it was going to pass, so that's what made me go ahead and file. When I filed, everything went under 2024 because nothing had been signed by the governor at that time. I did that out of an abundance of caution. I spoke with Jewel about doing that out of an abundance of caution because I had at that time only been here 15 months.
So can I interrupt you with the question?
Yes.
So you're filed for 2024?
As of today, as of a phone call from Wendy this morning, it has now moved over to 2022 because the governor signed the bill yesterday. He
Okay.
signed the bill yesterday. So when I initially filed, as did Representative Latvala, when he initially filed, it was all under 2024, the original term of which I would need to run again. As a result of the signage of SB 524 on yesterday, everything has now moved up to 2022, this cycle. So I just wanted to share why I did what I did and why it is at that time. Many of you also probably, unfortunately, heard the rhetoric because the gentleman who has already filed had campaign signs out at polling locations and been distributing literature prior to the governor signing the bill. Original intent was, I'm going to run in Dave Eggers' district. No, I'm not sure. I'm going to run in Karen Seal's district. And so just the whole mannerism in which this has come about has not been, in my opinion, for the betterment of the taxpayers and the voters in this district. If it were something that was being done for the betterment and the benefit of voters and taxpayers in this district, I would have no problem in supporting that. I have always tried to support those things. What I'm not going to do is say that I'm going to do something that is for the benefit of all taxpayers. It depends on how the taxpayer sees the subject. So when we make our decisions, we're not saying, we shouldn't say, I'm doing this on behalf of the taxpayers, because you're not speaking on behalf of all taxpayers and all voters. We're speaking from the perspective based on who perhaps we have conferred with. I don't want to do anything that would cause legal issues and concerns with this board. I have not talked to another attorney other than Jewel and our staff about this issue. So that's the legal premise that I have to base my decision on. I will continue to say that this was directed specifically at this county commission, no matter how you try and paint it. I will continue to say that this was directed at a specific seat. I may have been collateral damage as a result of it, but, it was directed at a specific seat. I've made it very clear to that individual. I've been very clear and forthright to that individual that I thought what he was doing was wrong when he said those not so nice things about Commissioner Eggers, being upset at him. And I have said that and spoken up for my colleague, Commissioner Seals, because I just think that there is a decorum and a professionalism in all that you do. I have wanted to run for county commission, but I also stated that I felt the commissioner, now Mayor Ken Welch, has done a wonderful job. I would not run against him as long as he continued to do a good job. I waited my turn. I did not try to squeeze anybody out. I didn't try to push legislation to squeeze somebody out. Yes, Commissioner Seal has stated that this will be her last term, and I think she's done a wonderful job. I just think that pushing legislation specific for one county and using the guise of redistricting. And yes, you're correct. I do recall the conversations, Commissioner Pease, when we were talking about the maps and the changes in the boundaries and stuff, and I recall you had some suggestions about your district. So thank you for bringing that up, because I had forgotten. So it does change boundary lines of some of you guys. It does. For me, it does not. So I can't speak for everybody. For me, it does not. But I'm speaking from a position of what the legislative body should be addressing and what they should not be addressing. And I am of the opinion, and I think other legal minds are also of the opinion, that the language that was inserted into SB 524, specifically targeting single-member districts that are charter counties who do not have term limits. That's what it says. That's what the language says. Pinellas County is the only one of them. Now, if this was something they tried to do last go round, I'm sorry, you guys, I didn't know that about
There's
this.
different.
Okay. I do know that the last go round, there was an attempt for term limits on school board members, because that came up. There was a push for term limits on school board members, and I opposed that. The person said there was no uptick from that. That's wrong. I opposed that, and so did many other people. The FSBA did not oppose as an organization, but various school districts did in fact oppose that. There was nothing in there about redistricting. It was only about term limits. Those specific school boards that didn't have term limits. So I fully, and thank you, Commissioner Eggers, for your comments as well. Genuine, to the point, and thank you for your comments about feeling good about working with myself and Commissioner Seal. I want you to know that I appreciate that, and that I do not think that your comments are directed negatively at me specifically or Commissioner Seal in any way. But and the last thing I want to say is, don't think for one moment that even by us having this discussion and bringing it up at the workshop, that the governor doesn't potentially already have his veto pen out just by merely discussing it. And the reason I'm saying that is because we have visualized where things have been targeted just by someone bringing up the conversation. I would be so disappointed if those projects that Commissioner Peters has noted, I would be so disappointed if those projects, who are for the greater good of almost 1 million people in Pinellas County, who senators and House members who sponsored those bills, that legislation, and put that forward and got it through the various committees and appropriations. It would be so sad if, because this piece, which was never a part of the voter protection bill that the governor put forth, it would be so sad if that were to happen. But I do know that anytime we take a vote on anything, there is the potential for that vindictive nature that we've seen come out of Tallahassee. And that is most unfortunate and most sad, because that is not the way that I've ever governed. That's not the way that I ever want to govern. We may not agree, but I'm not going to do those things, because I try to provide votes based on the best information that's being provided, and whether or not it's to the full benefit of residents in Pinellas County. So I just wanted to share some of those comments, and I think that's it for me. And the other thing I do need to know is, should I recuse myself? Because that's why I wanted to thank Commissioner Peters. Should I recuse myself? That's why I started out by telling you why I filed as early as I did. And not knowing how it was going to flow, but knowing eventually we get there at some point. And then the other question would be, so am I filing and running for 2 additional to finish the term that I'm already in? Am I starting a new 4-year term? Because I didn't see clarity in that. So that is also my question. Am I filing, running to finish 2 years that I've already won? Or am I now doing a 4-year stint?
Well, that's an interesting question. I don't know that that was in the
It
in
wasn't
the
clear.
legislation in the Attorney White.
It is not abundantly clear what that term would be, and that's certainly something that we'll be working through, particularly with the supervisor, who's going to need to know as well. But it is not abundantly clear in the act what what that term of office would be. I think that we have been assuming it would be for a 2-year term so that we would retain the staggered terms, because our charter does provide for staggered terms for the commissioners. Now, this certainly turns other things in our charter kind of on their head. My gut tells me that that staggered term provision would still be in play, and that's also in the general law for the state of Florida for non-charter counties. So that's definitely a principle that applies pretty uniformly across the board for legislative bodies like this. But that is an issue that we've identified as being somewhat unclear. I will tell you, I did look into the potential for voting conflicts under the ethics code. And there are opinions that are nearly dead on point to the situation that we have here, should you all take a vote on this matter, where the Commission on Ethics found no voting conflict under the ethics code. Under the statute that I spoke about with Commissioner Peters, and I will say, we disagreed very respectfully. I do not believe that would apply in this case, but I will tell you, it does talk about no officer or employee using their official authority or inference for the purpose of interfering with an election or nomination of office or coercing or influencing another person's vote. I would not construe voting in favor of a lawsuit to be what I just read to you. But again, I'm one lawyer. There's a subsequent part of the statute that also goes on to say the provisions shall not be construed to prevent any person from becoming a candidate. You're saying you've already become. We have not had a qualifying period yet. So, there's a question there which I would have in my mind as to whether this would apply or not. The statute also goes on to say that the provision that I read earlier about unduly influencing shall not be construed to limit the political activity in a general or primary or other election of any kind or nature, or of elected officials or candidates for public office in the state or of any county. So, to the extent that there is something to read into it, I do not believe this applies. I know, again, that we disagree. Reasonable minds can disagree, and that's why we have courts of law and lawyers. I don't think this would prevent you from voting. Now, I will say, there is a statute, and many of you, I think, are aware of this. We talk about this probably when I've spoken with many of you when you came into office. I think we probably talk about it annually when we do the sunshine training that you all are required to do, that does require all of you to vote when you are present. However, it does say in there, unless with respect to any such member there is or appears to be a possible conflict of interest under the voting conflict statute. So again, the research that I have done, which showed me some opinions that were very clear there was not a voting conflict, to me, that appears to be a possible conflict is really something that you all would need to resolve in your own discretion.
Thank you.
Anyone else?